Welcome to Admissions Live, the weekly web show for college admissions professionals. We're part of the Higher Ed Live network, where we strive for digital development and professional empowerment. I've got a good friend, Brandon Croke, on tonight's show, and we're talking about the use of private social networks for prospective students and admitted students. We're going to be talking about trends we see coming down the pipeline in 2013's recruiting cycle. I want to get right to the show, but you know I can't do that before giving a huge thank you to the sponsors that make Admissions Live possible. Admissions Live is sponsored by Welcome to College, who believe it's all in the visit and have created web and mobile applications to help institutions measure and manage their most critical recruitment tool, the college visit. Send us an email with the top 10 reasons prospective students should visit your campus this fall, and Welcome to College will add they'll add those top 10 reasons to your profile page on welcometocollege.com. So you can email those reasons to info@welcometocollege, and they will get that up for you. Admissions Live is sponsored by Scavenger, a Google-funded mobile game about going places, doing challenges, and earning points. Interested in how Scavenger works? Well, you can check out their online demonstration of their app. I just tweeted out a link for you with that. And this month you can join Zinch and Inigral for a special presentation, the 2012 Social Admissions Report, on September 18th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific. Zinch and Inigral have teamed up to do an in-depth study on student use of social media during the college search. The special report will give you the do's and don'ts of which platform and initiatives will make an impact on your recruitment cycle. So you can follow the link that we just tweeted or email outreach@zinch.com for details, or you can connect with tonight's guest after the show. And tonight we have Brandon Croke, the marketing manager at Inigral. While you might know Brandon from Inigral, one of the sponsors of Admissions Live, I think it's important for me to say that the choice to have him on tonight's show is not because of our partnership, but instead to bring some of the conversations that Brandon and I have had offline onto the show. Brandon is very passionate about his work in higher education, and I'm pleased to have him joining me tonight. Without further ado, I want to bring him on. Hello, how are you?
Great, Ashley. Thanks so much for having me.
No, thanks for coming on. I'm excited to do the show.
Did you survive the monsoon?
It was really crazy. There was a lot of flooding. I'm surprised at how many students on my campus do not own an umbrella. I don't think I saw one umbrella on campus coming into the office tonight, but
I was one of those students.
You were one of those students, yeah. Yeah. So it was wet out there. I think it's finally settled down.
Great. Well, I'm excited to be on Admissions Live for the first time, and I've got my higher ed shirt for conference season, so I'll be seeing you this fall at NACAC and High Ed Web and a few others, so hopefully you can see you in some of the Admissions Live crew around the country.
Yeah, definitely. Looking forward to NACAC. Don't think I'm making it to Milwaukee for High Ed Web this year, but we're going to do a lot of big things in Denver coming up, so stay tuned for that. I'm definitely going to be repping that I Like Higher Ed shirt that you guys put together. What kind of plans do you have for those? Is there something else behind that?
The plan is just to promote higher ed spirit. We all work in an industry. You know, every industry has their own little quirks and ups and downs. We happen to sell Facebook apps to higher ed, so the Facebook like and the higher ed shirt has been a big hit at conferences. So we just been giving those away and share some spirit and some fun. We should have some fun. We're working with students, social media. This should be a fun thing, in my opinion.
It is fun, and higher ed people are awesome people. I think these are conferences that you go and you get a lot of hugs, which I really like. So
absolutely,
yeah, digging the shirt for sure. Can you just give us a little rundown about your background in higher ed and how you got to be at Inigral?
Sure. So I'm from Ohio originally, although I'm in San Francisco now at Integral, and I was involved in college at an education nonprofit, and so we worked with children in Uganda to help fund their schooling, and got super involved in campus, ended up starting it at 5 other campuses in Ohio, and really just changed my life and kind of the involvement aspect and different things that you could do on a college campus. And so after graduating, I wanted to stay in higher ed, and I went to Hobson's and worked on their marketing team, their marketing solutions team, and was there for a bit, but really was interested in the future of kind of social media in higher ed, and saw Inigral pop up and saw a webinar about two years ago, and not 3 years ago, and I've been here for a year and a few months running the marketing ever since. So super excited to be involved in higher ed, social networking, a lot of interesting developments. A lot of schools are using different strategies. I'm here to just talk about private social networks, although there are a lot of other social networks, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Yeah.
But it's rarely something I see covered in the conferences, which I think is a disservice for the kind of possibility. And a lot of schools are using them, but mainly when you go to a social media presentation, it's about a Facebook page, it's about a Twitter account, kind of generic platforms, I'll call them. Some people call them third-party platforms or consumer platforms. But I definitely want to separate there's a difference between kind of social networking and students connecting with each other, and social media messaging, kind of institutional messaging from channels, which I'm sure we'll get into a bit later.
Definitely. So I think it's really timely to have this conversation about private networks. We're coming up on a brand new admissions cycle. Students just started at my institution with classes yesterday. Yes, they worked on Labor Day, and so did I. But we've got that fall class here, and we've been recruiting the next class, but things really kind of kick into full gear with this next group of students that we hope to admit and enroll. So I think it's a great time to have this conversation, and I think you did a good intro on some of the things that we want to cover, but for those folks that aren't currently using what we would call a private social network, let's try to define that for them and maybe talk a little bit about the basics of what that private social network looks like and why you might use it. And why you might use it, maybe we'll go into a little bit more depth on, but
okay,
start with
absolutely.
basics.
So I would say a private social network is a branded online community specifically owned by, the particular institution. And so although, maybe a private Facebook group could be kind of like a mini network, the functionality and limitations for all the generic platforms are a lot. And it's a lot about institutional management, fitting into how they need to track data and manage student questions. And really for the student side of things, it's really how they want to interact. When we asked the recent survey that we were talking about of what percentage of students think the college should provide a private social network for their fellow students, it was about 75% of the students said that they should provide a private social network, which is the same data point as Noel Levitt's Expectations found about 3 years ago, 2009 study. So students definitely want to connect with other students. As I like to say, Facebook became so popular at Harvard because students wanted to connect with each other at Harvard. They didn't necessarily need to hear more messaging from Harvard. Now, as Facebook grew to kind of take over the world, institutions obviously wanted to engage with students on those channels, and so they setting up Facebook pages is a lot of the initial kind of foray into exploring how to engage students. But I think the Facebook page is really a limited tool as opposed to an actual community where it's a student-focused platform where it's really the students to connect to each other, and there can be some institutional connections and messaging, but really it's an equal playing field between the institution and the student rather than a top-down messaging approach from a Facebook page. And I'm not saying to get rid of your Facebook page by any means. I just want, when we start talking about social networking and student engagement, I think there's a whole different kind of paradigm of looking at how can you connect your student population in meaningful online communities versus just connecting with your students with your content update, with your news, with your photos, which is absolutely one part of the equation. But I think today I want to focus on that other part, that student-to-student connection.
Definitely, and I do run a private social network at my institution, and one of the conversations that we had in deciding to move forward with this was first we were looking at the challenges that we were facing in using those kind of off-the-shelf free networks that were available to us, and mainly utilizing what Facebook gave us to connect our students. And I had a lot of challenges with that platform changing every 3 to 6 months, that kind of unpredictability of what I was going to be able to work with. So that was one of the challenges, but we talked about communication a little bit, but we weren't really interested in having a private social network to get messages to students. That's a whole nother challenge in itself. I think relationship building and offering them a place to connect with each other and with people on our campus was the main goal. And you and I have had conversations about why you might want to move this into a private domain versus a more public domain where students might already have connections with friends and family. So I think that's a really important point to make, and I think something that we want to share with folks. So I think you said it best when we were on the phone a little bit earlier, but can you talk a little bit about how you view these private networks as transition networks?
Yeah. I'm not sure if there is a academic literature about this, but I see really the private social networks as an ability to transition from your friend graph and everybody who's influencing you in high school, which obviously is an important part of your life, but really you're looking to take that next step. And you don't want to have to post or feel limited in your identity of maybe who you were, who your friends were, or what kind of likes or interests you had in high school. Obviously, some of those are going to remain the same, but a lot of students want to have their next step and their next journey and their new interests and what they want to get involved in on campus. And I think separating yourselves or having the ability to go off that current friend graph and that current online identity to this new place provides a lot of freedom, and it's something that's rarely talked about with students and how they develop. But I can tell you from personal experience, I became a completely, not completely different, but definitely took another step in my development coming from high school, separating from my high school peer group into college. And then once I had a really good college peer group, even graduating and then going, and I was really more involved on Twitter, graduating, looking at the job market and connecting around social media. So I always had this new digital way to kind of take the next step and connect with people I wanted to learn from or really had a shared interest with, which is how I got the job at Inigral, connecting with Michael Staten, who founded the company, was through Twitter. And my friends in college weren't really doing that, but I had that ability to talk about these new things with this new platform. So I always think there's a place for kind of shedding old skin and creating a new profile or kind of creating something new that's going to lead you towards your future.
Definitely, and I think that's spot on for what admissions professionals are trying to do. We're trying to find that one student or maybe one or two students at a high school across the country that is going to be a good fit at our Institute of Higher Education. And a lot of times there's something really unique about that student that makes them a good fit for you. And that student might be a one-off in their high school. They might be the only student that's interested in microelectronic engineering, but they've done a lot of research on it, and the students that they might have already connected with on social networks don't get that. They don't understand those kind of unique idiosyncrasies that make the student who they are. And when you put them into a network that's full of people like them, maybe now for the first time they're meeting people that are more like them, it's a great place to be able to kind of start new and connect with people and share things that are unique to you in your own academic life and how that might transition over into your social life at college. So I think it's a really important point to make, and I'm glad we're able to do that. So I want to talk a little bit about what's coming down the 2013 pipeline. You mentioned that at conferences, this isn't a topic that gets a lot of play, and I'm not sure why that is. It might be because right now it's such, having a private social network has typically a price point associated with it, and we had to take this long journey to kind of convince our industry that social networking was okay to do, that it was a safe kind of thing to do, that we kind of got over all of those kind of privacy scares that were out there. And then I think once it was okay to be involved in social networking, we wanted to do it for free. We didn't want to invest in it. So I think that might be why we don't see a lot of that going on, that kind of talk happening at the conference level, because we're not quite ready to invest in it. But hopefully these conversations we can have, tell us a little bit about what you see as being popular for this year. And I want to talk a little bit about what it really means to invest in something like this.
Yeah, I mean, we really see, and if you ask anybody who studies the social networking space, that the future, people say, what's the future of social media? And the future of social media really is people gathering around highly relevant niche communities. And if you look at all the sites, there are a million sites out there, and there will continue to be more and more every day. And as they get a certain population, maybe there's people that are really interested in certain things and they gather on Pinterest, or maybe they love taking photos and they're on Instagram. As students are kind of joining, as certain pockets of students are joining these different networks, institutions seem to want to have a presence on those, and trying to just spread themselves across all these different channels. And what I really see with the private social networks is the niche community that's really useful for students is going to be something that the institution owns and manages and designs, and something that really helps the student and helps the institution manage that relationship better. So the future of networks is not only important to follow the next shiny object, but to have something that's really specifically designed for your use case in mind. Whatever the school is looking to do, or that the student is looking to do. Students, when they're going off to school, they're looking to make friends and get questions answered as the top two things that they can do online. And institutions are looking to make sure they're finding the right students, being able to get the students through the admissions process, making sure they end up showing up for campus and not getting cold feet. Or I saw that you had the Harvard researchers on studying summer melt.
Yep.
There were 3 reasons students melted over the summer months. There was financial barriers, which is absolutely an issue that we focus on with private social networks, but the 2 others, social anxiety.
Yep.
And informational barriers.
Yep.
And the use of social networks, you can help relieve that social anxiety by connecting with peers or getting questions or fears answered, or that informational barriers, being able to have targeted communication based on a student's behavior on social networks.
Yep.
Which I won't go into completely because that's very focused around our product, but there's a whole new level of insight, really, that I think we're just scratching the surface now in the higher education community with social media, going from originally Facebook likes and impressions into more student-specific behaviors that they engage with the institution, and the specific affinity groups that they have, and then the messaging and reporting that can kind of be used based on that social networking data can really be used to improve the student experience. So, for example, talking about the messaging, if there's 3 students who are interested in robotics and they create a interest group around robotics at your school, they don't have to get made fun of in the Facebook group because they're the only people that said, hey, is anybody else interested in robotics? But when they fill that out in their profile, it allows them to connect directly and create that new community. So I think that new profile is a really important feature from so many different aspects, but when I say, well, the student gets to create a new profile, they're like, oh, well, so what? They already have a Facebook profile.
Right.
It really just allows for all this new information. And that information about the student, that student likes robotics, and they're also from this town, and that they haven't made any friends yet in their online community. So maybe that's somebody that needs to be reached out to, or maybe they're creating their own communities and creating their own clubs, and that's somebody you could reach out to be a student ambassador. The next year. I mean, there's just so many different ways you can take the analysis when you've got really in-depth look at your student body.
Yeah, and I think you made 2 really good points that I want to kind of reiterate, I guess. One thing that was really important to me was that kind of directory search that you don't have access to if you're just using something like a Facebook profile. Facebook's not going to let you search by the major that you have at your institution, or the college that student was admitted to, or their hometown. Maybe if you have access to their profile and you've made them a friend on a different level, there's just so many different variables and boundaries that you have to overcome on a platform like Facebook, that if you customize something yourself, and you put these students in a private network where everything is designed for them, that kind of directory search that a student is given is a really powerful thing. And I think back to my early Facebook days, when Facebook allowed you to have an advanced search on their directory. And that was one of the best things about it, because I was new to my institution and I was able to search for other people that were more like me without that advanced search on Facebook. Students can't really do that. So I think that was really a powerful reason for us to kind of move away from the out-of-the-box solution and go into something that was more customized. And then the other thing that you kind of touched on, what was it? It might come back to me. I'm sure it'll come back to me because I think it was a point that we are going to make again and again. But when you're talking about trends and what we think is going to be popular with social media, so these niche markets, these niche groups that are going to come together and try to connect on a more, I don't know, a smaller social network than a larger university-wide network. You're able to form smaller groups within the admitted group that you have. What kinds of things are you planning on discussing with the new research that you have rolling out? And is any of that supporting those trends that you see?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, taking a step back, the first question is really should colleges, our prospective students, when you're recruiting this new senior class, are prospective students even checking you out on social media sites? Because a lot of people are spending a lot of time updating content and measuring effectiveness and optimizing the content and planning it and getting it approved and responding to content. And so you wonder sometimes, what is my prospective student audience really engaging in that, or is that the current students, or is that alumni that are engaging? And so what we saw was that out of the high school seniors now, 72% of the students had reported of researching a college via a social media site. So that data point is pretty high. A majority of the students, maybe 3 out of 4, I'll say, have looked at your school via social media presence. Now, we don't know if they're researching the social media and checking out your school's account, or if they're literally messaging their friend on Facebook. It's kind of up to the student's interpretation of the question. But we were specifically asking a lot of times about schools' profiles on social media site. And then we asked another question, saying, do you even think colleges should have a social media presence? And 2/3 of them said yes. 20% said they didn't really care either way, and 5% said no. So I think that breaks down, on average, students are for this type of communication. They're obviously spending more and more time on this. I don't think the question is, are they using it? Are they looking at colleges? I think the question is now is what's happening now, and what do we really want to, where are we headed with all of this?
Right.
I'm definitely a futuristic thinker, and as I see more and more networks created, I don't see more and more time of the day being created. I have to run, the messaging and on our social media accounts, and it's hard enough to manage, a few accounts, let alone you're trying to. I see sometimes at the bottom of an admissions email, talking to an admissions professional, and they say, well, make sure you like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, pin us on Pinterest, add us to your circles on Google+, and, yada, yada. And it's like you tell somebody to do 7 things, they're going to do nothing. I don't have the stats to back up that the students haven't done those things in the email signatures, but I just see them and just think they seem a little bit tacky, rather than, if you have any questions or want to meet your future classmates, join us here. And that type of profile, I think, once you have that one community, is a really important connection point. And you can have within that connection point, you can add those other profiles for students to kind of branch out. But really, that central hub of student to institutional connection, student to student connection within the institution, I think, is a really important connection point to have.
Yeah. So there is the point to be made about connecting students, and that's definitely a primary use case for a private social network, that you want to connect your prospective students with each other. You want to connect them with other current students. You want to connect them with admissions counselors, and you want them to be able to talk and build a relationship with each other. A lot of the other social networks, those that you're mentioning, the Pinterests, the Instagrams, the Twitter even, is much more about messaging and kind of being able to show what your campus is like in real time, for people that have really high interests in things like Instagram. They really enjoy photography. They really enjoy, those kinds of networks. I can see them thinking that it's cool that you're there. But for those, it's really about either generating content or pushing out marketing messages, and less about connecting students with each other and letting them form relationships with each other. I guess you can make an argument that those networks do that on a certain level, but they're not designed to do that. So I think those things are okay to do and okay to have, and even more so since it's only targeting users of those smaller private networks or those public networks, it's important to kind of aggregate that content back to your website, or maybe even aggregate that content back into your private network so that they can see those things all in one place, and they're able to do the most important thing, which should be building the relationships, understanding the social atmosphere at your college, and being able to make those important decisions to apply or to enroll based on that level of connectivity and relationship building that they've had. And I don't believe that the other large public networks that are popular with students are designed to let college-bound students connect and engage with each other. It's just not what they're built for. So, I think we've made this argument, I think, pretty strong, but there's still the issue of cost, right? It's still going to be an investment, and I think, kind of hit the nail on the head with even your own experience talking about trying to manage these kinds of things for Inigral, trying to manage relationships on the networks that you have, and kind of keeping everything rolling with all the other tasks that you have at your job. So I have been in this role and the only person in my office in this role, and it takes a lot of your time. So when you talk about using Facebook because it's free, you can't discount those human resource hours that you're dedicating to it. And I think you've done some research and done a little bit of writing on this too, right?
Yeah, and there's an article we wrote about the 5 hidden costs of free social media marketing. But that's another great thing about the community. Creating a community is you're creating a place for the students to connect with each other. So the content, you don't have to be pushing out and feeding the content piece all the time, because the students are creating that content with each other. They're creating that message and the dialogue, the questions that they have, the interests that they have. So I really think getting out of the way and letting students make friends and get involved on campus and learn about clubs and organizations, that's a great thing to have. And although you can do, you can do a lot of different messaging, it's really hard once you get so many likes on Facebook to have that targeted messaging capability. And you're left with trying to please everybody and pleasing nobody, rather than creating these niche spaces where students can really connect. And on the measurement aspect of it, I mean, when you're trying to create content for all these different networks and then measure, is this being really effective? Am I doing this right? And the niche networks the private social networks allow you to have a whole new level of insight into the measurement and the effectiveness of it. When you know that a student has made a certain amount of friends with their institution, that's much more likely predictor of if they're going to enroll in your school, the number of Facebook friends they have in common, versus if they've liked your page or not. And that's all the interesting things that we're diving into with our data analysis team, is just looking at trends of correlating what online social networking behaviors correlate with enrollment outcomes and really positive student outcomes, whether that's the retention rates or their yield rates or their likelihood of depositing. All of that can be tracked when you take the data from a private network and correlate that with your CRM or SIS data. That's a really interesting, I see that as the future in the next few years of what we're looking to do, and what institutions want to do is lay a foundation that's meaningful for students, and that's providing institutions with the type of data they need to be able to manage their incoming class and gauge the size and be able to make sure that they're going through the process efficiently and effectively. And they don't need to spend all the time creating all this social media content. You can let the students have the fun themselves, and you can just kind of be there, really just making sure the tone's appropriate, the questions are getting answered, and then even stepping in once in a while and showcasing different events on campus. All can be happening. It's really just a walk. Our product, our VP of products, Nick Punt, is really always talks about managing. It's a win-win relationship that we have to walk with the students getting what they want and the institution getting what they want. And sometimes they're very different things. Sometimes they overlap. And I think a private network where they can connect with their friends or peers, is a good overlapping of those needs.
Yeah, I have to absolutely agree. Data for me is what I see myself involved in the future in social networking for my institution. Data is so important, and the more we can customize these networks to fuel data to our CRMs and to our own institutional goals, the better we'll be at our jobs and the more accurate we can be to the students that we're then going to be marketing back out to. I think about LinkedIn and the kind of data that they have on our alumni. So thinking down the funnel on the other end, the kind of data that LinkedIn is collecting on our alumni is incredible, and it's more accurate than what our alumni CRMs are building. And, you know, for an alumnus to want to update their profile in our alumni network, that's really low on the priority list, but on their LinkedIn profile, it's much more high priority. And so that's where my mind is going when you talk about data. You know, what kinds of things can we build into our private networks to be able to track what kind of a student is interested in enrolling, what kind of actions do they take in the network, what kind of a profile do they have, and where do they come from, and all of those kinds of things we can collect with much more accuracy than even tracking things through the applications that we get. So I'm really excited about where our private networks are going, and what kind of a data mining we can do with them to make our jobs hopefully a little bit easier, but at the very least more accurate. And, you know, being able to then go ahead and recruit the students who are taking certain actions and then coming to campus and being successful students on our campus, being successful alumni, if there's anything that we can track as early as the prospect or applicant or admitted student stage, I think that's helpful for everyone. So data is absolutely huge, and again, not something that you can count on in a public free network to provide you. That's going to cost you something, but what, you know, is it worth your return on investment? I absolutely believe it is. I want to talk a little bit more about what other challenges admissions offices face and how you can use these private networks to overcome things like communication reach to students and students' preferred communication channels that they have. I think this is one of the biggest challenges for admissions offices in the past decade for sure. The way that communication channels have changed, and you know, the move away from print materials into digital media, and whether that digital media is actually reaching students. I think there's a diversity of what students do prefer, and do you have a powerful enough CRM working for you in the back end to allow you to customize communications for your students? So what's out there in private networking that might help address that huge communication challenge that we have?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned a really important point about personalization and segmentation, that no two students are the same, and when a student fills out a private social network profile, they're filling out where they're from, what they're interested in, and then you can have them opt in for our networks, the Inigral networks. You can have them opt in to whether they want to be notified of things via text message, iPhone notification, email, or Facebook notification, so it allows them to really choose the communication channels they want to receive. So, I mean, there's mixed research about, you know, text messaging students. Is that invasive? And I think, I'm not sure if it was a No-Levitz stat or not, but basically a lot of people in the industry said, well, students don't want to be texted. And I think they don't want to be spammed. But when we asked our focus groups for our research team, they say, well, what if you have a really important deadline coming up? Would you mind getting a text then? Oh, yeah, please. I need that reminder. So there's a difference between, you know, just being able to spam people and send them all these different messages, or being able to give them what marketers dream is the right message at the right time, which is never going to be perfect. I'd be lying if any solution ever gives you that, but there are smarter ways that I think we can do things, and hopefully better ways we can track and segment communications to make sure you're engaging the students that aren't engaged, or sending that relevant information about the marketing meetup that's going to happen in the first week of campus. I mean, all that's really a powerful way to reach students in a way that they opt into. So they can kind of choose their fate, or they can end up opting out. So I think that individual student social profile, that interest profile, that social profile of where they're from, who they are as a person, that provides a really rich environment to send those targeted messages. And it's something that maybe I'm not sure what CRM you all use, but it's not something that my CRM has the capability of doing at that level. That's a really meaningful level.
Yeah, I'm working with one of those products that can do it, but getting it there to actually be able to execute it is something a little bit different, and something that usually takes customization and a few more tens of thousands of dollars. So, the technology is out there. Absolutely. We have the technology. Have I seen a CRM that's robust enough to do everything that we would want it to do? No. Are there ones out there that have the capability of doing it? Yeah, but we're not quite there in terms of customization for the student yet. So that's one part of it. And I love that you brought up spam, because we have the ability to communicate with our students in all of these different channels that they might want, but we also have the ability to really mess that up for ourselves. So, you get the student that doesn't want to be text messaged because there's, college X, Y, and Z down the road that are spamming them with text messages. Or you have the student who really doesn't want to get anything in email, they want everything in print, but the print mail is being cut from our budgets. And so we have the ability to communicate with students, but we haven't quite figured out how often and when and where they want these messages sent. And I think it does take a really powerful communications team and integrated marketing strategy and a powerful CRM to keep everything organized for you to actually make that happen. So I think we'll still have a challenge with that until we have the ability to let students really kind of pick and choose for themselves the communication delivery. But the private network is a great place to kind of start allowing that segmentation without having that powerful CRM. You do have the ability to let students kind of start to segment themselves into different groups, different kinds of interest groups. So maybe you have messaging that you think would be cool for all of the students going into the music program, but you're not sure if they're going to check their email to get that message. You don't want to pay for a print piece just to music students, but you might be able to target a quick message in the network, and they might be more likely to see it there. So I think it's a good step in the right direction for that huge challenge that we face. Other kinds of things that you see as opportunities coming out of these private networks for admissions folks.
So I'm really excited with prospective students beginning their college search and wanting to connect at an institutional level. We hear this from time and time again from students. They want to connect with two groups, and this is what we saw in the research, is they want to talk to their admissions counselor. That personal relationship is extremely important, and they also want to connect with current students and see what life is like. So a lot of times these prospective students are going out and doing research, and they're asking these people, well, hey, what's it like? But if they don't have a friend at the school, not only are they less likely to enroll that we've seen based on data, but they don't have somebody to go to and get that resource. So providing something with a private social network where the prospective student can say, hey, I'm interested in marketing and so, and I'm from Ohio. Can you connect me with somebody like me on campus to answer a question or have a quick chat? I really see so much potential for that personalized one-on-one connection for prospective students to have that insight from a current student. Which is what I had with my brothers. I followed the footsteps of kind of where they had went to school because they had a really great experience. But being able to have somebody you can bounce ideas off of and ask, either the admission counselor, current student, and then eventually admitted students that they want to connect with, all of that could be managed through a private social network. And I was thinking about this earlier. I was going to say that the institutions could have better control, but they don't have. That's not true. There's no controlling any of it. But I think a solution like that can help manage these relationships better and make them just more efficient for both parties. And I think that's what what we call social enrollment management is the term we've come up with kind of the future of the students connecting online through social networks to learn about universities. Yep. That's a really interesting future that we're excited to be a part of, and working with a bunch of institutions on that. But I don't want to go off into the whole sales pitch. I want to keep it a bit higher level on this. But the data that we found was the top three. When we said to the students, do you want to join a private social network for the university, they said yes. They wanted to connect with current students and their admissions counselor, very close percentages, and right behind that, they wanted to connect with students like them, like their fellow admitted students or their fellow applicants. So there's a lot of possibility in these for prospective students. And I think when somebody lands on your Facebook page and they're thinking about your school, schools are driving all sorts of traffic to their pages. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, as I said, and when they go there, they're not necessarily, they might see the content on the page, but is that really meaningful? Did they really make a meaningful connection? Did they really take a meaningful action? And it's really hard to track, one, and two, it's a really limited audience. It's a really broad audience, so when you're trying to target that limited audience, it's hard to get the right message at the right time. So the research that we saw from the curve of how meaningful was the content that you saw on the college's social media sites, it was just a big bell curve. 50% saying so-so, maybe 20% saying it was good, 5% saying it was great, and then another 20% saying it was bad, and 5% saying it was horrible. So I think it's a really kind of meh. How was the content on the social media site? It was so-so. Right. And I think it's really hard. I don't think that means, I've seen people interpret that saying, well, we need to have better messaging and we need to plan our content more and all that stuff. And I just don't think you're going to optimize or solve anybody's needs when you've got 20,000 Facebook fans or maybe 2,000 or what have you. And so all of those data points lead me to think that there's really a need for this other kind of solution that can make these connections.
Right, especially when you're talking about why you're producing content. If you're producing content because you want to showcase the social experience on your campus, I think that's a good start, but do students really want to seek out that content alone? I don't think so. I think they rather have that real connection with a student that's had the social experience there on the campus. And we're already seeing students do this in other sites online. So it's really easy for a student to make their college list these days. There's a lot of websites available to them that can form a college list of places that they might want to go according to their academic and career plans. They can get that done in a study hall and have a list of schools that they want to continue to look at. But the next place that they're going to go, I guarantee you, and we heard this at the StayMates Teens Talk panel, they're going to go to peer review sites about the school because they don't want to go to your website and just see all the great things. They want to see the great things and the bad things all together. So they're going to go to places like College Confidential, where they can view other students' thoughts about the institution. And if you're able to instead bring them back to a place where they're connecting with your current students in a place that maybe you're not monitoring, you're not censoring, but you're able to kind of do a quality control check to make sure that it is the right information that's getting to the students. That's much more powerful in my mind than even the content that you might be generating in newsletters and I do all sorts of content generation. That's part of my job, making YouTube videos and doing that kind of fun stuff to show students what it's like on campus. I'm not saying that's not important, but that real meaningful connection is something that I think students will take a lot from. And if you're offering that connection and another competing institution's not offering that connection, I think you've got a real leg up on that competition. So I think we've really kind of gone through a lot of the basics for networking and talked about a lot of new cool upcoming things. I'm excited to talk again, maybe more about data and ROI and some of the things that you're going to be revealing in the presentation that you've got going with Zinch. Can you just, again, for the viewers, let us know what that is, when it is, and I can send out another tweet for the registration for that?
Sure. So we're doing a webinar releasing a survey that we conducted with over 7,000 college-bound high school students. So we partnered with Zinch to do that, and we really wanted a refresher for some of the stats on what network students are using, what network students are using to connect to colleges. If they did connect with a college, how was that experience, or what experience would they like to have? Just kind of high-level summary of some of those. And those are broken down per demographics. We have them broken down by all the College Board regions. We have them broken down by ethnicity, some mobile questions in there as well. So we're releasing that Tuesday, hold on, let me pull out my calendar, Tuesday, September 18th at 4 p.m. Eastern. And we will be doing a webinar with Zinch. Gil Rogers and I will be doing that. So looking forward to sharing new research in higher ed. All of the data talk that we've been talking about with private social networks, you can find that specific information at integral.com/data. But feel free to just send out the tweet about the webinar. That's the social media social admissions 2012 report that we're super excited about, and we'll be sharing that at NACAC with some folks as well. Be passing out some zip drives with that information and giving away some shirts as well. So stop by and say hi.
Awesome. Well, I just sent out that link. Absolutely. I hope to be there. My travel calendar does not conflict. I will absolutely be there. And also see you in Denver. So we're hopefully going to be collaborating on some cool stuff at the conference. If anyone is going to be out there, absolutely look us up. If you have more questions for Brandon, you can follow him on Twitter at @bcroke. I just tweeted out his Twitter handle for you. So if you have questions after the show, fire them his way. I'm sure he'll be happy to connect with all of you. And we're coming up on the hour, so it's time to wrap up. Want to thank Brandon again for coming on. This was so fun. We're going to do this again because I like it. And I want to hopefully invite you all back next week. I will have hammering out the details of our show next week, but hopefully if it works, it's going to be a really great one. Big surprises coming. So stay tuned to the Higher Ed Live site and to the Higher Ed Live Twitter handle for announcements of next week's show. And it will be, no matter what, we will be here 7 p.m. on Tuesday next week. And I hope to see you then. Thanks a lot, all.